Yate, Shio, hello, and a warm welcome to the 16th speaker series, A Sense of Place, Indigenous Perspectives of Land, Water, and Sky. This series is hosted by the Indigenous Education Institute. Today's session is supported and funded by the National Science Foundation AZLE project, named Collaborative Research, Lifeways, which is learning in and from the environment through multiple ways of knowing. My name is Dr. Nancy Maryboy. I am Diné and Tsalagi, Navajo and Cherokee. My Cherokee name is Sawayuga, and I am from the Cherokee Bird Clan. I'm also of the clans of the Diné, Bibitoni, the Deer Springs Clan, and Senjikini, the Cliff Dweller Clan. I'm the founding president and executive director of the Indigenous Education Institute, which has been in existence for more than 25 years. We are located in the San Juan Islands of Washington State and on the Navajo Reservation. Over the past 4 years, we have presented 15 sessions of our original speaker series, featured renowned Indigenous speakers from around the United States and Canada. I would like to begin today with a heartfelt acknowledgement of the Indigenous peoples of our Mother Earth, to honor our many participants from around the world. Usually, we acknowledge the land on which we are living or presenting, but in this day and age of virtual online realities and the pandemic continuing of COVID-19, we wish to honor all Indigenous peoples around the world. I also want to acknowledge that I currently reside on the ancestral lands of the saltwater salmon people of the Salish Sea, who have called this place home since time immemorial. I honor the inherent and acquired treaty rights of these Indigenous peoples. The presentations in this series has been chosen to reflect an awareness of the foundations of traditional Indigenous thinking and living. In our native ways, everything is interconnected. So rather than a specific focus on biology, astronomy, or other separate disciplines, we will be presenting dynamic worlds of interrelationships and processes of reciprocity. An additional focus for this speaker series is expanding awareness and understanding of cultural differences and to support successful and diverse working relationships, whether it be in education, health, national resource management, astronomy, NASA, museums, and science centers, and tribal communities. I want to thank you personally for attending this webinar. The interest you have shown is heartwarming. We have over 500 people registered from all across the United States. And we have participants from around the world, including many from Canada, others from Germany, Ireland, and South Africa. It is also interesting and heartwarming for me that we have more than 130 different tribes represented in our registrations for this presentation today. Today, we are excited and honored to bring you the story of YAKANAL, Rekindling Our Ancestral Relationship to Place, a beautiful project led by Dr. Shelley Valdez and Dr. Isabel Hawkins. YAKANAL engages Indigenous youth in cultural exchanges and cultural preservation programs to share rich cultures and traditional knowledge. The program brings together multi-generational groups of Pueblo participants from New Mexico with Maya, Zapotec, Mixtec, and other Indigenous groups from Latin America to engage them in immersive cultural exchange experiences. Shelley is a member of the Laguna Pueblo and of Hispanic descent. She is the president of Native Pathways, an educational consulting business. She's worked in the area of science education, evaluation, and traditional Indigenous knowledge for more than 40 years. She has a PhD in science education. She's also a storyteller and a Pueblo potter. Isabel is a senior scientist at Exploratorium Science Center in San Francisco. She grew up in Cordoba, Argentina. She is an astrophysicist and a science educator. Isabel spent 20 years at the Space Sciences Laboratory at UC Berkeley. She is focused on Latinx audience engagement, and through cultural astronomy, she makes visible the cultural roots of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Before we begin this production, I would like to ask you to put any questions for the presenters into the question and answer box and not into the chat box. This will enable us to better serve you towards the end of this presentation. Now, please welcome the two women who I am proud and happy to call my dear friends and sisters, Shelley and Isabel. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy, and David and Chris and Ashley and Polly for all that you are doing with this beautiful series and allowing us to participate today as we are volunteers for over 20 years as co-directors for the YAKANAL Indigenous Youth Culture Exchange. Watua hena me ku'astuita sina hanoksta Mayushka Washtitsa Ekawakso. Isabel?
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Nancy, Indigenous Education Institute, and all the amazing collaborators that make these amazing series possible, especially during the pandemic. I just couldn't wait until another amazing speaker would be present in this series. I'm very grateful, and also grateful to you, Shelley, for your partnership over these many years. My name is Isabel Hawkins. I'm she, ella pronouns. I'm senior scientist at the Exploratorium. I'm from Cordoba, Argentina. I'm Latina. But before I begin, I am here in Lafayette, California. And I just wanted to acknowledge that before colonization of this region by Spain, Lafayette and the vicinity from where I'm speaking to you today were inhabited by the Saklan tribe of Indigenous Bay Miwok. Also, Ohlone Indigenous people populated some of the areas along Lafayette Creek. And right behind me, I see a grandfather oak, and I can only imagine that this tree that is now more than 300 years old would have been also the site of many pre-colonial activities of Indigenous people right here in my backyard, and I'm grateful for that connection. I think that maybe we can begin the slides. Shelley, are we ready?
We're ready.
All right, so let me do this. Okay, so it's right here, but I'm just going to go to the top. Okay, and I'm going to share. And we're going to begin. How does that look, Chris?
That looks perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So we're just going to go right through, and the first slide. Oops, I'm sorry. There we go. The first slide showcases our amazing team, the YAKANAL leadership team and coordination team, who has been working with us side by side to organize the activities. I want to recognize their great effort and commitment. It includes Thelma Antonio, Gianna Capitan, Chrissy Riley, Julia Wall, Kyle Swimmer, and Chris Ami, but many other participants that you also see in the photograph. And we want to acknowledge our elders, including Anne Ray. Also, Philman and Miriam, thank you so much for all your support. And the group is here featured during our November 2023 strategic planning meeting that we had at Laguna Pueblo. I was present there too, but I was taking the photo. So this is our amazing group. And as you can see, it's multi-generational, very diverse, and very committed. So maybe we'll go to the next slide. And Shelley, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how YAKANAL began.
Absolutely. So let's begin with the seed of YAKANAL. Next slide, Isabel. So this is our origin. It began here in our homelands in New Mexico, Chaco Canyon. So the sun and stars brought us together to work one particular week with a NASA-funded project called the Ancient Observatories. And there are several books that we utilize in our work with YAKANAL that have come out of this particular program. Isabel and I, together with the NASA astronomers and two Pueblo youth, my son Shbiai Kayo and his buddy, his best friend, Mike Coe, went to Chaco around 2005, and they both asked us, why aren't there any Pueblo people here besides us? And then the NASA colleagues asked the same question. And out of that seed and that thought emerged YAKANAL. The beginning of YAKANAL was with the Laguna Acama High School Mesa program, where we brought the youth and some of the elders to Chaco Canyon to experience science of place. And so it was through Mr. Aragon and his group of Mesa students that ignited this beautiful program and pathway.
Yeah, and I remember that we brought the youth and elders from that Mesa program. The teacher was amazing. I remember the bus driver, Lorraine, was also amazing. And we worked consistently with that group for a few years. As you can see here, we had photos from a March 2008 visit to Chaco Canyon during the March equinox to observe this beautiful solar alignment. It was very cold, very early in the morning for sunrise. But it was a very moving and very powerful connection to place. And also, again, we brought the youth in 2010. But I just want to point out my T-shirt right here. I think it says the first Maya Pueblo Youth Cultural Exchange, Indigenous Youth Cultural Exchange, or something like that. But that was 2011, was the first official one in which we actually connected the Pueblo youth with the Maya participants, because I had been working on cultural astronomy projects in the Yucatan, and I started to see that very much the same issues that were present at Chaco Canyon and the surrounding Pueblo communities, this disconnect between the ancestral sites and the living communities, was the same thing that was happening in the Yucatan. And also there were so many common links, including cultural traditions, understanding of their environment, of course, many of our foods and trade routes. So it just became clear that there was an opportunity to bring youth together from different cultures, indigenous youth, so that they could learn from each other, from their elders, and from their traditional lands. So that was a very important moment.
Absolutely, and in particular, that deep connection, community-based evidence connection, our Pueblo communities, as well as our relatives down to the south, we have this, what they call Western scientific evidence. We have, there's cacao residue on the cylinder cups in Chaco. Brass bells and parrots. 100 parrots were found, skeletons of parrots were found in one part of Pueblo Bonito within Chaco Canyon. And then you look at our parrot clan. So there are incredible connections through the stories, through the songs, and absolutely Western scientific evidence that our people knew about way for millennium. So we look at the YAKANAL program. The goal of the YAKANAL program brings the multi-generational groups of Pueblo and Mayan and Indigenous relatives together from the Americas. The program offers immersive experience to share Indigenous cultures and traditional knowledge. This particular photo was taken in the Yucatan and embodies that long-standing relationship through the exchanges of corn and many other gifts, such as the parrots, salt, copper bells, turquoise, and those cultural traditions and stories and songs. Here we see a Laguna youth, Kyle, and an elder, Roberta, and Pepe, including myself, in the Yucatan in a Mayan archaeological site. And Pepe is one of the leads of the partner that is working with us, continues to work with us from the archaeological sites. So we're very, we actually we were allowed to climb to the top of this particular pyramid, and we brought our elders along with us. It was incredibly beautiful to be at the top. No one's allowed to go there, and we were given that privilege, and it was just incredible. I just imagine our elders and our ancestors going to this space as well.
And Nancy, you might remember that you and I were in the Yucatan and we were collaborating with Pepe, and we were staying nearby, and how wonderful it was to be able to learn from that place.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was 2005 or 2006. So we've had a long-standing relationship with these partners, and been fortunate to be able to bring our other colleagues and sisters and brothers into this space.
Yes, we've actually done probably maybe 15 culture exchanges to date.
In total.
Total, yes, yes. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
And we go back and forth, and sometimes the exchanges will be for particular purposes, like such as making a video, or we have particular themes that we like to bring together the youth for, including like traditional agricultural calendars, sharing of water management techniques, and how it is that the gift of water is preserved traditionally by a science of place and native science. So we've had several themes, and that's always been very fruitful. Now you might wonder, where does the name YAKANAL come from? Well, first, it was a very long name, Pueblo Maya Indigenous Youth Cultural Exchange. And so our youth said, well, that's too long. And we don't want an acronym necessarily. We would like a name for our effort that embodies who we are and our relationship to our ancestral food. And so they decided, the youth came together. I remember it was at your house, your ancestral house in Laguna Pueblo, Shelley. We were there in January. It was very cold. We were sitting around the dining room table, and the youth came up with, well, if we're going to do something with corn, let's talk about our traditional languages as well, our maternal languages. Let's give voice to that. So YAKANAL joins two words for corn, Yaka from the Western Keres, and Nal from Yucatec Mayan. And so Shelley and I actually looked for corn to bring to you. I have here corn from Latin America. You can see how different it is, perhaps from corn that you might be familiar with. So this is Andean corn, and here's another beautiful pink color corn from Latin America, and Shelley's holding the Pueblo corn. So in here, in our hands, we present to you YAKANAL.
YAKANAL.
The youth also designed the logo for our program. They actually put it together. My daughter, Mary Ellen, was part of the team that designed the logo. So we're very proud of our youth commitment and their creativity that brings this program to life.
So YAKANAL is, there's multiple languages and cultures that animate the science of place through art, food, music, dance, games, and other forms of cultural expressions. There are different languages that are spoken among all of our teams. And it offers a small barrier, but that is beautiful because how did our ancestors interact? How did they learn each other's language? They did culture exchanges. And those barriers are easily overcome. The gift is participants cultivate the friendships, and through creating relationships, they find many links between their cultures and traditions. And over the 20+ years we've been together, they are consistently still communicating with one another, and it's just beautiful.
And they're so savvy, you know, they'll use the translators, and you know, in the beginning there was no such thing. So they actually, you know, was perhaps more challenging, or they had to pick, you know, the one or two youth that were fluent in the colonial languages, in the English and the Spanish. But then I remember Kyle said, forget learning Spanish, I'm going to go right to learning Mayan. And so he looked for a course in Yucatec Mayan, and he says, well, I'm not going to bother learning another colonial language. I'm just going to learn the indigenous language. And that was really great. So you know, the youth are very savvy. So in terms of, you know, Shelley has been mentioning this concept of science of place, and Shelley and I both come from a science background. So we wanted to make visible the cultural roots of science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. And what we mean by that is that the science that really emerges from a deep relationship to place. So YAKANAL participants learn about and share the scientific legacies of their ancestors that is embedded in their cultural traditions. So in the context of YAKANAL, science is rooted in the cultural identity of a community, and is really thriving when we as people can live in concert with nature, follow the cosmic order, really pay attention to the cyclical traditional knowledge that our ancestors have used so well over so many generations to live sustainably. And science of place is passed on to future generations through all forms of human cultural expression. And I'll just give you an example here. I guess the most obvious for us, because of our name, because of our relationship to the ancestral corn that is the mother food of all of the Americas. We have focused on the science of native agriculture, but also how it is that we bring ancestral ways of collecting and harnessing water, especially, for example, in an area like the Yucatan, where there are no rivers, there are no lakes, the water table is 80 meters down. So how was it that, you know, up to 50,000 people lived in Uxmal, this ancestral city, where there was no way of collecting water? And so there was no natural source of water, I should say, that was easily accessible. So what they did is they collected water on the system called chultunes, or cisterns, underground cisterns. And even they created this giant underground cistern in a natural kind of depression of the land. And then they shaped this artificial lake in the form of a snake, which is very important for Mesoamerica as a sign of fertility. And it's also connected with water. And also in this image, you see people who brought their traditional knowledge of their calendars for corn and Three Sisters Garden in Chiapas. We also see that in the lower right, the two women who are Zapotec that brought us recipes for traditional corn-based beverages that are healthy. And on the lower left, we see one of the YAKANAL youth tending their field in Laguna Pueblo. So the idea is to really honor our traditional knowledge, to restore well-being, and to be able to continue the traditions of corn, which are so important to both our communities. And this image also shows that we try at the cultural exchanges to bring traditional foods, to make sure that our participants are also preparing the foods. You see on the lower right, some of the YAKANAL participants are roasting corn in a traditional oven. On the upper left, you see some of the elders making the tortillas for us, and we engage the participants in the food preparation as well. So other examples of science of place involve drumming. And so Shelley will share with you about this important activity.
Absolutely. The science of drum making in this particular space, in this photo, we invite elders and community knowledge holders to come and go with us on our culture exchanges and provide immersive experiences. In this particular picture, we have a drum maker, John Herrera, who is Cochiti and Laguna Pueblo, and his whole family has extensive knowledge, and they're master drum makers. And he's showing the participants how the involvement of creating drums is really based on place. So you have to know when your logs fall down, you have to know when they're ripe enough to begin using as the base of the drum. There are certain trees that you use. You watch the tree come down and the nature's chemical process as it eats the inside of the drum and hollows it out for you. It does its own magic, the natural ecosystem. And then the drummer will take the particular log and carve it into the length that and width that they want to use for the drum. And then the animal hides come in, and there's chemistry all around processing that animal hide so that you wrap the drum completely with that hide. And then there are certain tones that each of the sides give based on the thickness of that hide. So these students, our participants, have learned this incredible magic of what it takes to create drums, all based on science of place. This knowledge is handed down and transferred from generation to generation. So thank you, Isabel.
Yeah, and this image here shows our Pueblo youth using these traditional drums, honoring our ancestors of Pueblo Bonito at Chaco Canyon, performing the butterfly dance, which is to rekindle the gifts of the pollinators. And so that was a beautiful time for us to be able to share the drumming and all of the science that came from the creation of these drums in this special place, in this ancestral site. Another example of science of place really speaks to the relationship between astronomical cycles and ancestral architecture. And Chaco Canyon is just one of many, and the same thing occurs also in the sites in Mesoamerica, where we focus on identifying and making visible the lunar and solar alignments marked by the precise arrangement of these ancestral buildings with the landscape and the celestial cycles of the sun and moon. During these exchanges, we work with local experts and also the elders to provide perspectives on cultural astronomy as applied to agriculture, as well as ceremonial purposes. And the observation of some of these cycles can serve as a way to rekindle those ancestral relationships. And here's another example, this one from the Yucatan, in which we see a solar alignment marked by the precise arrangement of this Maya temple from 800 AD at sunrise during the equinoxes. This particular image was taken in 2005. But now Shelley will continue with another example of science of place, focusing on pottery.
Absolutely. As a Pueblo potter, I always apply my knowledge of science and my traditional knowledge to create my pots. You can see in the background, we have an image of one of our bee hives, and we'll get to that pretty soon. But there's Pueblo image symmetry and designs within these beehives. Like very much similar to the Pueblo pottery. This particular individual is David Early. He is from Laguna Pueblo, and he is also from Cochiti Pueblo, and he is becoming an incredible potter. These are his pots that he brought to one of our culture exchanges, and they are spuna, which in English is transferred into water vessels. And this image shows that the culture exchange participants who made these beautiful Pueblo pots, and there's two shpunas that David had created or developed, and they share that, and then there's one in the upper right-hand corner, Mayan cacao deity, which is really representing, you can see the cacao seeds, the chocolate made by this young Mayan potter from Yucatan. So together they animate that science of place through the process of learning the clay, going to pick the clay, learning how to process it. And there's so many common links in these particular processes for creating clay, since more than 100 and there's an example, more than 100 vessels have been found in Chaco Canyon that again show that residue of cacao that came from the south, that our relatives from the south, you know, those, they were doing culture exchanges. And so science of place really is animated in the very beautiful process of creating clay pots, and from the touching the earth, pulling the soil, to the chemistry of firing the pots. So now we go on to science of geometry. This image shows Great Kiva in Chaco Canyon, this particular image is a kiva. So the kiva, just to give you a snapshot of what a kiva is, it's a spiritual place of a pueblo that share the deep where they can share the deep cultural ceremonies and activities that are part of their lifeways. It's similar to a temple that you might see maybe in the Jewish culture. And so in this particular case, this pueblo kiva was underground, built underground, and would have had a roof, a large roof, to support more than 100 people. And so within this space in the kiva, a little over 100 people might have been able to fit into this particular sacred geometry building. The kiva design that we want to talk to you about is focusing on the proportions of symmetry. The YAKANAL culture exchange participants learn about science of place and sacred geometry in their ancestral architectural experiences, and the legacy that our Pueblo ancestors and the Mayan and our relatives to the south have left behind, such as cliff dwellings and great houses. We wanted to highlight the importance of selecting those materials that had the greatest strength and durability to create these particular types of buildings and structures. They're all aligned to beautiful geometry and symmetry, and they connect to the astronomical phenomena that we will move into now.
So I just want to point out, within this very large kiva, which would have supported a very heavy roof, how the roof was supported was using only 4 posts. And this is one of the locations of the post. I guess I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but in the middle of the image on the ground, you can see a circle, like a pit. Well, that would have been one of the regions where the 4 posts would have been located. And then what we did to highlight the ancestral geometric relationships is that we invited Kirby Jachu, who is from Zuni Pueblo. He's an elder and a retired professor from the Southwest Indian Polytechnic Institute, or SIPI, who demonstrated mathematical connections with what we call the golden mean, which is a fundamental symmetry that comes from also Greece, but was also used by Pueblo people, completely independent, to establish the natural symmetries of a circular kiva, bisecting it into 4 quadrants, and then bisecting those again, trying to find the circles that would go in the middle, And then the intersection between the circles actually define the position of where the 4 posts would have to be placed for maximum strength and maximum efficiency, because you don't want to put a bunch of columns inside, because then you cannot allow room for the participants to be inside the kiva. So you want the minimum number of posts, and those were found using the natural symmetries of the circular shape. And so he led the students in finding those symmetries and identifying where would the 4 posts have to be placed. And here's the other image that shows the entire design that was done on the ground. And actually that design is also on Dr. Valdez's t-shirt that you can see. And we will talk a little bit more about how we use these symmetries to help us plan our strategic activities for YAKANAL, using these symmetries as a way to guide the process. And so Shelley will tell you a little bit more about our strategic plan and how we
Thank
use
you.
symmetry.
Thank you. And this was one of our culture exchanges, and this is one of the t-shirts that we're happy to share with you all. This particular image, as Isabel has mentioned, it's a strategic planning framework that draws upon the natural symmetries and points of the greatest strengths of our kivas, where the 4 posts are located to hold a heavy roof. As a traditional potter, I also use some of these patterns within my pottery, and you can see them animated in so many of the Pueblo designs. I want to point out, if you look down at the image on the left-hand side of the screen, the bird's eye view is actually the image of Chaco Canyon Kiva, and it shows you the 4 stars. If Isabel can use her pointer to show the 4 stars. This is the location where the poles would have gone. The visual images on the right animate the core values. This is our strategic planning framework. They animate the core values, the directions, and the goals of the YAKANAL program. In the north, we conducted ceremonies for the renewal of the land and also in the winter. The east brings the springtime growth and health to our communities with the sprouting of the seeds. Our program is wrapped around food sovereignty, so seeds are very important to that food sovereignty effort. The South is the coming of summer and is a time of learning and multicultural generational knowledge and sharing and educational opportunities. And the West is the coming, and the fall are the coming of reflections and evaluation and language revitalization, which is really prevalent in the entire circle, that language and that balance of life. The strategic planning model has helped to identify the activities of our YAKANAL program. And we still continue to use this as we map out and move over 20 years of our experience in our pathway. What's really important that I want to point out, as a professional evaluator, we have been able to juxtapose and lay our evaluation process and map it onto the strategic plan, which has been really beautiful for us.
Thank you, Shelley. So yeah, and it was as part of that strategic planning process that the YAKANAL participants indicated that they were ready to use the lessons learned and the wise practices of the cultural exchanges that we had and implement local projects where science of place could actually be animated and implemented. And so that has been a very important aspect, that we now help the youth focus on local initiatives and locally relevant activities. And especially during the pandemic, that was a very helpful way of keeping the group engaged.
So here we have food sovereignty initiatives through local Indigenous leadership. YAKANAL projects continue to work and thrive in this area to learn from land and sky and elders and one another. The YAKANAL participants continue to collaborate, exchange knowledge systems. In this particular photo, these particular images, you have the group in Guatemala up at the right-hand corner, left-hand corner, learning about and exchanging knowledge of their agricultural systems and how they plant their seasonal crops. And below you have two images, one of a harvest, the gifts of harvesting, and the gifts of seed saving, that are very important to all of our communities to save seeds for the continuation of our agricultural systems.
And there was a question on the chat about whether we use seed banks. And you know, the concept of seed bank, in a way, it's a very Western concept. All of the traditional farmers that we talk with, they say the best way to preserve seed biodiversity is actually to plant the seeds, not to put them in a seed bank. Of course, there have been over generations and over millennia traditional ways of seed storing, seed selection, and seed sharing within families and within communities. But the concept of having a refrigerated space where you have the storage of certain seeds for a future catastrophe is not a traditional worldview. So we are really focused on planting the seeds, understanding how you can grow the foods in your particular regions in response to the challenges of climate change. So those are two different worldviews. And so we, in a way, we don't really think about our seed saving practices as seed banking. But thank you very much for that question.
Yeah, and we do have seed saving vessels, what are called seed pots, but they're used over and over every year. And so while we save seeds, they're to use. The next slide shows the gifts from the YAKANAL food at Laguna Pueblo. Over thousands of years of relationships to the land, we have been farmers, and we care for our fields and for the generations to come that will inherit those seeds and those beautiful gifts.
And during the pandemic, because we couldn't gather, we actually used the Zoom technology to the best advantage. And we collaborated with experts both in the Southwest and in Mexico, and the Yucatan, to actually do what we called virtual field trips, and to have talks from experts from Mexico and the Southwest. And I think we were modeling a lot of the virtual exchanges in what this amazing series by Indigenous Education Institute has done. So because you were the pioneers in this area, but then we decided that it was good to try and gather people in small groups for particular purposes to keep learning from each other. So here's something that is very dear to our hearts. And I remember, Shelley, you wrote this proposal for starting beekeeping in Laguna Pueblo and bringing back the bees. And so maybe you can tell them a little bit about this amazing aspect of our work.
Absolutely. We also have been able to reignite that tradition of beekeeping practices to revitalize that medicinal gifts that the bees, our relatives, the beautiful pollinators, have blessed us with, as well as the different uses in our culture for those gifts that the bees give. We have an incredible partnership with the New Mexico Bee Association, where we have sent so far 12 participants to become beekeepers. We have a bee apiary that we have the relationship with Laguna Pueblo and the village of Laguna, and the 6 villages have just been incredible partners, and they've gifted us with the use of the land to create and establish a bee apiary where we do outdoor learning and teaching with our community. It's multi-generational, both male and female. And here, actually, you can see in the right-hand corner, you can see a beautiful image of the beekeepers and our youngest participant. At this time, Kachini is his name. He was 4 years old when he started with the bee program, and he can tell you all about the bees. He has been he has presented at national and local conferences, and he tells the story of the bees, and he has this incredible relationship with them. One of our project leaders gave a keynote at the annual New Mexico Bee Conference, where he shared that connection to the Mayan beekeepers and the homelands of the Pueblo, and how that beekeeping has been part of our culture, and reigniting and sharing those experiences, and continued activation of taking care of our bees has been a blessing to YAKANAL. And we are continuing to grow this program, and see that also that beehive, it's in the back of my screen, that picture of the beehives. So we will continue to honor our relationship with our beautiful pollinators, and hopefully grow the team. And our efforts are to grow the apiary in each of the 6 villages, and then move to other pueblos as well. Thank you.
And this image shows our counterparts in the Yucatan who take care of native stingless bees. These stingless bees are called Xunancab, or the ladies of the honey in Yucatec Mayan. And we have groups of youth and elders that are learning together to take care of these bees, and rekindle the ceremonial practices around the bees as well. And so that has been an important continued cultural exchange for our youth. And also we have many other examples of additional activities that we hold. And here's kind of a collage of these activities.
We have participants that are rekindling relationships with adobe, architecture, for reforesting our lands with tree giveaways. We've given over 800 trees, fruit trees, within Laguna Pueblo to honor our relationship with the pollinators. And we are conducting Starry Night, Indigenous cultural astronomy nights. This will be our 3rd one. A shout out to Laguna Department of Education and the Pueblo of Laguna. We will be hosting our 3rd astronomy night in Laguna, March 8th. And we have had culture exchanges with the Mari, the Quechua in recent times. We're featuring Indigenous astronomers from Oguala, Lakota Sioux, Mayan, and Pueblo, and Greek. We are really working in concert with a lot of our partners, including Explora Science Center in Albuquerque, National Radio Observatory, NARO, with Dr. Julia Bird, and Exploratorium for supporting this particular event that's coming up. It's a whole day of STEM with Laguna Department of Education. So we continue to carve out these beautiful places. If you look at this particular picture, right in the right-hand corner up above, there's a sign that says trees all gone. This last tree giveaway went in 18 minutes. 18 minutes. We had over 150 trees that YAKANAL gave away. And oh my gosh, we're going to be doing it again soon. So maybe early spring.
So another really exciting component of YAKANAL that, again, was youth-driven and as a result of the evaluation is a female focus component called Mother Moon. The young women and grandmothers that were part of the cultural exchange that we had in 2014 in Jemez, Pueblo, led the development of this program that focuses on female relationship to the cycles of the moon, and how the cycles of the moon affect the medicinal plants, the harvesting and utilization of natural pigments for dyeing and other ceremonial purposes, weaving practices, midwifery, and fertility. So one of the main goals of the program is to animate our female connection with the moon. And we are now in the 4th phase of this program. We have had cultural exchanges among the women in Guatemala, Chiapas, Mexico, Peru, and Chimney Rock National Monument. And so in here you see some examples of that exchange between youth and elders. Another important component of Mother Moon is very much a localized effort led by the young women of our program, Gianna Capitan, Chrissy Riley, and Julia Wall, supported by Thelma Antonio, and some of the partnerships that we have with the New Mexico Tech, who is bringing us a relationship with the construction of these hoop houses, which are very important in these kinds of very harsh climates, to have the hoop houses to be able to grow the medicinal plants. And so participants follow the moon phases to track the growth cycle of the plants, and thus are rekindling a very personal relationship with the moon, which is really the most generous part of the sky, both during the day and during the night, because you can easily track and find the moon.
I wanted to point out in the right-hand corner is we also have this beautiful partnership with Laguna Rainbow Corporation, and we helped to build a hoop house at the Laguna Senior Center and Laguna Elderly Care Center, because our elders were asking for their medicine plants. So it's been a healthy relationship. So now as a evaluator and a storyteller, we use an Indigenous evaluation process, and we know that evaluation has always played a key role in our efforts. We listen to the voices of our participants. They drive all of our activities, and evaluation has been part of that listening. We use the Indigenous evaluation process that includes participatory through talk, story, photo, voice, rose, thorn, and bud, and roots, that we continue to use and ignite and bring in those voices. I have mentioned youth that I am, because I'm an Indigenous evaluator for over 20 years, we have brought in youth to help me and support YAKANAL's evaluation. And through that partnership, I have hired 2 of our local evaluators to come work with my company. My partner, Jill Stein from Reimagine Research Group, and I continue to support on a voluntary basis YAKANAL's efforts. So these are a few of the quotes from YAKANAL participants and our grandmother, the Mayan Baba.
And this is a slide that shows an effort that was supported by the Cultural Conservancy, which the Mayan youth, together with the Pueblo youth, actually produced. And to learn more about YAKANAL, we encourage you to see this 5-minute video. I'm going to put the link on the chat, which is a beautiful video poem, poetic documentary created by the participants. And we are really thankful to the Cultural Conservancy, because they came and they trained our youth on multimedia development and brought the equipment. And we spent 3 cultural exchanges dedicated to the creation of this beautiful video, which has been screened at the Santa Fe video screenings, and also showcased at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. We cannot do any of this amazing work without the help of our lead coordinators, without the help of our participants, without the support of our elders, and in particular, without the support of our fiscal sponsors, funders, and partners. Our fiscal sponsors are New Mexico Foundation and Laguna Community Foundation. We're very grateful for your leadership and support. And all the other wonderful logos that you see here are the groups that have continued to give us support over the years to allow us to do the work that we love. So thank you so much. So I think with that, we leave you with this last slide. There's our website, yakanal.org. And we have a few minutes, hopefully, for a couple of questions.
Okay, oh, thank you, Shelley and Isabel, for a wonderful, inspiring presentation. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see any of the
No.
chats that come in and questions, but there's some people that are so interested in your work, and with they're mentioning ways to continue on with you through different Native communities. And the last one I'm just seeing says absolutely beautiful, and I totally agree. So I know we're going to go over our time a little bit, and we know that some of you will have to leave, but I think we'll continue and have a few questions, just because there's so much dynamic and interest in this beautiful presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Polly Walker, our dear sister and the chairman of the board of Indigenous Education Institute.
Thank you, Nancy. I want to say from the very deepest parts of my heart, Wado, thank you for such an inspiring presentation, and that the name of your organization is particularly meaningful through Cherokee cosmology. And I'm sure you know this already, Shelley. You talk about these deep relationships of respect and reciprocity, and Selu or Shelu in the Eastern dialect is the corn mother. And she is the creator being that teaches us about relationships of respect and reciprocity. So when I saw the name of your organization and understood the meaning of it, just made my heart sing. And so now to some of the questions from participants. And just again, going on from Shelu and corn, we have a question: how do you protect these native corn parcels from nearby GM cornfields?
I can take a response from the Pueblo worldview. I think that our own farmers, our agricultural farmers, are they know well that they need to protect those seeds, and those are our children. They are our children. So actually, as parents, you protect your children. And so the GMOs, yes, they play a huge part of creeping into our boundaries, but I think among the Pueblo people, they really try very hard to exchange within the Pueblo. And then we have another partner who is protecting seeds, native seed search out of Tempe, Arizona, that is helping the indigenous people protect those seeds. So they continue to transfer these seeds from generation to generation. The Pueblo farmers, they know very well how to protect them.
I think there's a powerful of those collaborations between Native knowledge holders and Western practitioners.
And for the Mayan, I think, for our South American relatives, Isabel?
Yeah, and I feel that that's such an important question because, as you know, the corn is the #1 crop in the world, but most of it is hybrid and GMO corn that is used to either feed animals or to create biofuel. So the use of corn has been distorted from its original intention to nourish the people. But the native corn is still being preserved in Mexico. There are 58 varieties of corn, most of them in Oaxaca. There are groups that are fighting for the preservation of native corn. There are activists. They're using their lawyers as well as the knowledge of their local farmers to prevent the contamination of the fields, because as you know, corn loves to pollinate and cross-pollinate. So if you introduce a variety of corn that is foreign to the region, it is likely to take over. And also Monsanto and other companies are doing tremendous damage to this effort because they actually force the farmers to keep buying seeds from them, because they cannot keep the seeds from one generation to the next because the seeds will not grow. So they have been distorted so much that those seeds cannot be replanted. They have to keep buying seed. And amazingly, that the Monsanto calls their corn maíz mejorado, which in Spanish means improved corn. So even the way that they mention what this corn is about is really a blatant lie. It is not improved by any means. Yes, it will grow faster and you can feed your animals with it, but some of the farmers are telling us even the animals don't want to eat it. So it's a very dire problem, but the farmers are still fighting for the native corn. This corn came from Peru. I brought about 50 different types of corn from the farmers directly given to us so that we could teach using these varieties here in the United States and other places and use them as part of our cultural exchange. And also I remember that Kyle tried to plant the Mayan corn in the Pueblo, and tell us what happened, Shelley.
Oh my gosh, that Mayan corn, my brother Shet and Kyle, they were in the field and that corn was towering over them. But the interesting thing, I mean, it was purple. It was just pure purple, the leaves. The interesting thing is the corn didn't come out till late in the season. Our Pueblo corn came out. The Mayan corn came out late in the season, but it was incredible. The corn, the Pueblo corn was this high and the Mayan corn was just towering. It was beautiful.
Thanks for sharing those very inspiring examples. We have a question here about some of the books. They said, could they know more about the books that came out of the project?
Yes, I did put it on the webinar chat. I think I did put up high, it says Traditions of the Sun books, Chaco Canyon and Yucatan. But did the link come through? Maybe the link didn't come through. Let me just put that in. I will share that with you.
We
But
also
Shelley,
have
maybe you could tell them more about the books themselves.
Sure. This was a beautiful project. Actually, Nancy, you were involved too, with the ancient observatories and one of the particular books that we use is Traditions of the Sun, which is a story of Chaco Canyon. And Jim Spadacini from IDEM did an incredible job of the visuals and the website. And it really tells the story of the landscape and how of Chaco and how important that landscape is to that learning space for Pueblo people, and in reference and animating the solar phenomena. So, and then we have the other book that is a partner book that speaks about the Yucatan relationship to the sun, the solar phenomena. So both those are complementary books. The Mayan book is actually written in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and importantly, Yucatan Mayan. So check them out. We also have I think we put in the chat, First Nations Development Institute, who is one of our continued supporters. We were one of the featured articles in one of their on the website. It's called Our Foods Are Beautiful. Check that one out too. You'll learn a little bit more about our food efforts, food sovereignty efforts.
I'm looking forward to looking at those myself. We have a question here. I think that might link to some of your work, Isabel. It says, have student participants had an opportunity to work with and learn from Indigenous codices and other forms of writing and imagery related to origin, genealogical stories, and histories?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we did have a workshop in Guatemala in which there was a scholar from Germany that came that has been studying Mayan codices for a long time, together with local epigraphers, which is how we refer to the decoding of Mayan codices, which are these accordion-shaped books that are from the colonial period, but they were written before the arrival of the Spanish, and they record incredible amount of knowledge. There's only 4 of them left in the world, out of the many hundreds of them that were actually burned by the Spanish. But there's one particular codex called the Madrid Codex. The last 10 pages of it speaks about the caretaking of the stingless bees. And we had this workshop in which the Maya youth that take care of these bees were learning how to decode the words and the numbers, the tables, which many times give you calendrical dates. But this is an amazing story. And this is little Louise Shelley, one of our longstanding
Beekeeper.
members, beekeeper. The group was kind of stuck in decoding the meaning of this particular passage. And normally when you look at a Mayan writing, you read 2 columns at a time from top to bottom, going left, right, left, right, left, right, kind of like that. But he said, what if we try reading this bee passage by following the more natural movement of the bees when they come out of their traditional hives, which is a figure 8. So going down in a figure 8. And so they did that in terms of ordering the glyphs to make sense of the passage, and it made perfect sense. So, and the expert from Europe, he said, this is publishable material. We should work together to do that. But that was a perfect example of science of place, of understanding your connection with the bees that they have been taking care of for a long time, and actually putting in their own worldview in the interpretation of their own codices. So that was a breakthrough moment.
Absolutely fascinating. Nancy, I'm going to ask you, should we wrap up here or do we have time for a few more questions?
Why don't we have one more question? I know we're over, and but it's interesting because almost nobody's dropped off. They're just fascinated by the question and answers. Why don't you ask one more question, and then we'll have a wrap up.
Okay, so the question I'm going to ask actually links to some questions that were sent in before the presentation. So I'm going to choose this one because I think it covers questions from 6 or 7 different people. This says, I'm Yakoke, Isabel and Shelley. I'm a PhD student at ASU, have worked with TCCI, and I wanted to ask you about the easiest means of connecting with you to facilitate connection and project realization. And many others had very similar questions.
Isabel?
Well, I'm going to put here definitely our website, yakanal.org, is a way in which you can connect with us. There's a contact information there. Also, if you know of organizations who would be willing to support our work, the best way to do that is to go through the New Mexico Foundation, which is our fiscal sponsor. And I think Chris has a link that he might share with you. If you can encourage organizations to donate to our work, we would be very grateful for your contribution or contribution of sister organizations. But I think the main thing is what we like to do with Shelley is share our process with other organizations that are interested in duplicating cultural exchanges or duplicating food sovereignty projects, and then share our lessons learned. There have been always hiccups, but we always learn from our process. And the beauty of our relationship with community is what propels us forward in ways that are mutually beneficial. So we would be glad to hear from you. Shelley, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, the one thing that we do have is incredible wise practices that we can share that are valuable to cultivating and sustaining that relationship for our generations to come. One thing I want to say to educators out there is, don't keep our Indigenous students in 4 walls, in rooms that are man-made. The learning comes from the land.
Right.
Take them out to the land. That's where science is animated. We don't have words for Western science. It's simply and profoundly our life way.
Definitely. Thank you so much for everyone's contribution and participation. I really thank IEI and all the collaborators. Thank you, Polly, for your wonderful facilitation. Chris, thank you. I know you're in Argentina, in my homeland right now.
Tawa e, thank you, Mama Shkunama, everyone say hopa for all you do to bless us with these gifts that we can continue our work. Tawa e.
Gracias.
Well, I want to thank you so much. This has been one of the most inspiring and heartfelt and deep and significant and important events we've had on the whole series, and they've all been great. But I particularly want to thank you all for all of your work. And I love the term, I think you've originated it, wise practices instead of best practices, because wise practices does not make a value judgment. It honors the wiseness of the project, not one over another. And I learn so much from talking to all of you constantly. So I thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Polly, for your beautiful. Well, first of all, I love your background there. In New Mexico, and I wanted to thank Chris Tarrant especially. He's broadcasting this from Argentina. This is a global affair, and Coyote tried very hard to disrupt it. The last 15 minutes before we went on, he threw all kinds of tricks at me and at Chris and all of us. And so, Chris, thank you so much for all your work and your beautiful handling of Coyote. I want to say,
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
I want to say one last thing, that we will send out a short survey at the end of this program in a few minutes, and I urge you to please answer the questions. This is how we know, besides hearing the chats and the question and answers, hearing the answers to these few questions really gives us a strong indication of who we would like to have next and go forward with the series. We have great supporters already, and this one I want to mention again is funded by the National Science Foundation and the Lifeways project that we're all involved in one way or another. So thank you so much from everybody, and Wado and Ahiehe. And if you all just give a shout out, if your word of saying goodbye, see you later. I'll start with Wado and Ahiehe.
Let's get.
Wado.
Okay. Well, that will close it up for today. Thank you all so much for attending. And our next two speakers are going to be exciting. We'll be sending out invitation. We have Commander Nicole Mann, who is the only Native American woman astronaut, and she was the commander of the ISS, the International Space Station, for 2 rounds. So it's just a great honor. We've tried to get her for years, and that will be coming up. And we also are going to have a special one just looking at Indigenous views of the eclipses, and that will be coming up also soon. So thank you again. I hate to get off. This is such a wonderful group, and thank you all for being part of it.